They said no maid ever lasted in that house, not one. The gate was grand, the Bel Air mansion breathtaking. But inside was a battlefield. At the heart of it was Madame Akemi Tanaka. Beautiful, polished, and deadly with her words. She slapped without warning. She yelled without mercy, and her insults could cut deeper than a whip. She had broken 9 maids in 6 months. Some ran away crying. Some left before morning. One jumped the back fence barefoot. Then Naomi walked in, dark-skinned, quiet, carrying nothing but a worn duffel bag and the fire in her eyes. She wasn't there to run. She wasn't there to please. She had a sick daughter. Nothing left to lose. And a weapon Madame Akemi had never faced before. What Naomi did in that house didn't just change her life. It broke the unbreakable Madame Akemi. The mansion on the winding hills of Bel Air was the kind of place people slowed down to stare at. A towering black gate, a flawless driveway curving through manicured lawns. Cars so polished they caught the California sun like mirrors. But past that perfect exterior, the air was heavy. The staff moved like shadows. The groundskeeper avoided eye contact. Even Mrs. Gable, a chef who had once cooked for senators, measured every step as though afraid to disturb the silence. That silence had a source. One person, Madame Akemi Tanaka. Some called her Madame Ice, others Madame Perfection. When she passed, older staff muttered a name in hushed tones, one they dared not say aloud in her presence. At 33, Madame Akemi looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine, tall, poised, and always dressed as if a red carpet were waiting, even if she was only going to the garden. Her expensive perfume lingered long after she left a room. Her words lingered even longer. She didn't just give instructions, she commanded. She didn't just discipline, she struck with a slap or a sentence sharp enough to leave invisible wounds. In this house, her opinion was law. And in just half a year, 9 maids had walked out under that same black gate. Some in tears, some in silence, one without her shoes. The house itself wasn't the problem. The work wasn't the problem. The problem was her. Madame Akemi. She was Mr. Kenji Tanaka's second wife. The first had died many years ago, leaving a silence in the mansion that was never truly filled. Mr. Tanaka was a man who carried power like a second skin. Almost 60, with silver streaks in his hair, he was the CEO of 2 thriving tech companies and owned more real estate than most people owned pairs of shoes. People spoke his name with respect all over the country. But what they whispered about most was the constant turnover of maids, until Naomi arrived. Nobody said hello. Nobody asked her name. They were tired of learning names that changed every week. The housekeeper simply pointed to a mop and muttered, "Start with the marble floors." "Madam is coming downstairs," Naomi didn't argue. She tied her hair back, picked up the mop, and began to work. She had one reason for being there, her daughter Maya, in and out of the hospital with a heart condition. The bills were piling high, threatening to drown her. Naomi whispered to herself, "Just endure it. Even if they insult you, endure it. 3 months, that's all." For Maya. She was still wiping the grand foyer when she heard it. Click, clack, click, clack. Heels, sharp ones, then silence. Naomi looked up and there she was, Madame Akemi, standing at the top of the sweeping staircase in a wine-colored silk robe, holding a cup of tea like she owned the world. She looked Naomi up and down, then at the mop, then at the water bucket beside her. Without saying a word, she tipped the bucket over with the toe of her slipper. The water splashed across the clean tiles. Naomi gasped, stepping back. Madame Akemi came close, her eyes cold. "This is the 3rd time this week someone has blocked my walkway. I am not in the mood. Clean it. Now." Naomi didn't speak. She bent down, picked up the mop again. Her sneakers were soaked. But she kept cleaning. From the hallway, the housekeeper whispered under her breath, she won't last. She looks too soft, but what nobody knew was this, Naomi had buried her pride long ago. She had cleaned homes where they treated her worse. She had begged in hospitals for her daughter's life. She wasn't soft. She was silent fire. The next morning, Naomi woke up before 5 a.m. She swept the front patio, cleaned the glass doors, and mopped the living room again. This time with less water, no splash, no mistakes. By 6:30 a.m., she was in the kitchen washing dishes beside Mrs. Gable, the cook. "You're up early," Mrs. Gable said, surprised. Naomi smiled gently. "I'm just trying to do my work, just be careful. This house, it's not about working hard. It's about surviving." Madam's mouth right on cue, they heard the soft, controlled, angry footsteps. Madame Akemi entered the kitchen, her silk robe tied tight around her waist. "Where's my lemon water?" she asked sharply. Mrs. Gable rushed forward. "I was just about to, I wasn't asking you," she cut in, turning her gaze to Naomi. Naomi wiped her hands and bowed slightly. "I'll get it now, ma'am." Madame Akemi narrowed her eyes. "Room temperature. Not cold, not warm. Just right. Do you understand? Because if I take one sip and my throat feels like it entered a sauna, you will regret your life." Naomi nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She took a glass, poured water from the dispenser, and carefully added 2 slices of lemon. She walked slowly, steady hands, quiet feet, up the marble stairs to Madame Akemi's room. She knocked. "Ma'am, your water." "Come in." The room was spotless. Gold curtains, perfume bottles shining on a dresser. A small white dog sat on the bed like royalty. Naomi placed the tray gently on the side table. Madame Akemi didn't say thank you. She took the glass, sipped, paused. Naomi's heart beat fast. Then Madame Akemi smirked. "You're lucky. You got it right." But just as Naomi turned to leave, Madame Akemi spoke again. "There's a stain on the bathroom sink." "I hate stains, I'll clean it now, ma'am." As Naomi entered the bathroom, her eyes caught a faint rust stain on the porcelain, likely from a ring. Without hesitation, she reached for the cleaning spray and began to scrub gently. Then, thud. Her shoulder brushed a perfume bottle. It wobbled. She caught it just in time, her breath hitching. A quiet sigh of relief escaped her lips. But when she turned around, Madame Akemi was standing by the doorway, arms folded. Without a word of warning, she walked forward and slapped Naomi hard across the face. Naomi's head snapped with the force. "You're clumsy," Madame Akemi said coldly. "I don't like clumsy people." Naomi's eyes burned, but she didn't cry. She bowed her head and whispered, "I'm sorry, ma'am." Then gently, she picked up the perfume bottle and placed it back in a perfect line with the others, hands trembling, spirit steady. "You'll clean the guest room next," Madame Akemi said, already sinking into her bed, phone in hand. "And iron the bed sheets while they're on the bed." "I don't like rumples." Naomi nodded again. "Yes, ma'am." As she left the room, Mr. Tanaka was standing in the hallway. Graying temples, neatly pressed suit, a calm face. He had heard everything. Their eyes met. He didn't speak, but Naomi could see it, that small flicker in his eyes. Pity. But she didn't need pity. She needed that salary. She walked past him without a word and went straight to the guest room. Because in Naomi's heart, one thing was clear. She would not leave. Not until her daughter could live. By the 3rd day, everyone in the house was watching. Naomi hadn't cried. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't packed her bag and run like the others. But Madame Akemi wasn't done. Not even close. She didn't like being ignored. She didn't like being studied. And something about Naomi's silence felt like defiance. So, she turned the temperature up. First, it was the missing uniform. Naomi had just finished cleaning when she returned to her quarters and found her uniform gone. All that was left was a see-through lace nightgown that obviously wasn't hers. Naomi didn't say a word. She came out wearing a faded t-shirt and her own clean work slacks. The housekeeper gasped. "You're going out like that?" Naomi only replied, "It's clean. It's decent. It's enough." Later that day, Madame Akemi came downstairs, took one look at her, and smiled her slow, mocking smile. "Did you sleep in the gutter, or are you just dressing to match the mop?" Some of the staff chuckled nervously. Naomi didn't respond. She bowed, picked up the mop, and kept working. But the more she didn't react, the more unsettled Madame Akemi became. Then came the accidents. Madame Akemi poured red wine on the white living room rug and acted like it was a mistake. But it wasn't. She did it on purpose, just to test Naomi's patience. Naomi didn't ask questions. She didn't complain. She quietly got the stain remover and started cleaning. Once, Madame Akemi even accused Naomi of breaking a crystal bowl that she herself had knocked over. Still no reaction. Naomi simply said, "I'll clean it up, ma'am." Even Mr. Tanaka began to notice. One evening he sat quietly in the garden with his newspaper when he saw Naomi sweeping near the flowers. Her face looked tired, but her hands were steady. "Naomi, right?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes, sir," she said, stopping to greet him properly. "Are they treating you well here?" he asked carefully. She paused, then smiled a small, sad smile. "They're treating me like life treats many of us, sir. But I'll be okay." That night, Mr. Tanaka looked at Akemi and said, "Why is that girl still here? With the way you've treated her, most people would have quit by now." Akemi took a slow sip of her wine and smiled slightly. "She's still useful. That's why she's here." But even she could feel it. The energy in the house had changed. Naomi didn't fight back with words or tears. She fought back with presence, with patience, with that quiet, unshakable dignity you can't buy. And that was starting to scare Madame Akemi. It was Saturday morning. The sky was heavy with clouds, and a soft drizzle tapped on the windows. Inside, the house was unusually quiet. No insults, no slammed doors. Naomi had just finished sweeping the east wing when she passed by a hallway mirror and saw a reflection that made her stop. Madame Akemi, seated on the marble floor, barefoot, her silk scarf half falling off her head, makeup smeared, mascara running. Naomi froze. She had never seen the woman look so human. Madame Akemi was staring at herself in the mirror, as if she didn't recognize the woman looking back. Naomi wanted to turn back. This wasn't her business, but something deeper held her feet in place. She stepped forward slowly. "Ma'am." Madame Akemi turned sharply. Her face, usually fierce, looked cracked. "What do you want?" she asked, wiping her face fast. Naomi bowed her head. "Sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to disturb." She placed a small, neatly folded, clean towel beside her on the floor. Then she turned to leave. "Wait." Naomi stopped. Akemi stared at her, eyes red, voice shaky. "Why do you stay?" Naomi was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, "Because I need to. For my daughter." "You could get another job." Naomi smiled faintly. "Maybe, but they won't pay like this one, and my daughter's hospital doesn't accept stories." Akemi looked at her, studied her face. "You're not scared of me?" Naomi hesitated, then said the truth. "I used to be scared of life, but when you face death in a hospital ward holding your child's hand, nothing else can really break you again." Madame Akemi looked away. For a long while, she said nothing. Then quietly, she whispered something Naomi never expected to hear. "They said I wasn't good enough." Naomi's brow furrowed. "Who, ma'am?" "My husband's friends, his family. They said I was too young, too flashy, that I was just a trophy wife with no substance." Her voice cracked a little. I thought if I could control everything, if the house was spotless, if the staff were perfect, maybe I'd feel in control of something." Naomi said nothing. She simply sat beside her on the floor. Not too close, not too far. And for the first time, Madame Akemi didn't tell her to leave. The next day, Sunday morning, came with a strange kind of peace. For the first time, no one shouted Naomi's name. The staff noticed it immediately. In the kitchen, Mrs. Gable whispered to the steward, "Did she just pass me without shouting about the spices?" He nodded. She even said, "Good morning." That evening, something strange happened. Naomi entered the master bedroom with a cup of tea. But this time, Madame Akemi was not on the phone. She was sitting by the window holding a small framed photo of Mr. Tanaka and his late first wife. "Thank you," Madame Akemi said quietly as Naomi placed the tea on the side table. Naomi froze. It wasn't just that she said thank you, it was how she said it. "You're the first maid who didn't try to impress me," she added. "You just did the work." Naomi spoke softly. "I'm not here to impress, ma'am. I'm here to survive." Akemi looked at her again, properly this time. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" Naomi smiled sadly. "So has everyone, ma'am. Some just hide it better." Madame Akemi nodded slowly. Then to Naomi's shock, she said, "Tomorrow, take the day off. Visit your daughter. I'll pay for the car service." Naomi's eyes widened. "Ma'am, you heard me. Go and see her. Come back by evening." Naomi blinked. It had been 3 weeks since she saw her child. She hadn't asked for time off because she was too afraid. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Madame Akemi turned back to the window. "Don't thank me. Just, don't stop being you." The next morning, Naomi stood at the gate holding a small white envelope. Inside were $200 bills, folded neatly. Madame Akemi had placed it beside her breakfast tray with a note that read, "For transportation and whatever she might need." Naomi's hands trembled. It wasn't just about the money. It was the kindness. She took a series of city buses across town to the public hospital where her daughter Maya had spent the last 2 weeks. Maya was 9, slim, gentle. Her heart condition made her fragile, but her smile was sunlight. When Naomi entered the ward, Maya looked up. "Mommy." Naomi rushed to her and knelt beside the bed, holding her close. "My baby, I missed you." She gently fed her some pudding and pulled out a small, colorful hair ribbon she'd bought at a convenience store. "See what I got you." Maya grinned. "Mommy, you said you'll bring me home when you get money. Is it soon?" Naomi held Maya's tiny hand and whispered, "Very soon, my love. God is helping us. Just hold on." What she didn't know was that Madame Akemi had asked her driver to quietly check where she went. Not out of suspicion, but curiosity. When the driver returned, he simply said, "She went to the county hospital. The daughter is there. The nurses know her." Madame Akemi didn't respond. She just nodded. That night, while brushing her hair, she stared into her mirror. For a long time, she thought of Naomi's quiet face, of her daughter, sick yet smiling. She thought of herself, of the woman she had become. And then she cried, not loudly, just 2 silent tears. They were the first in years. Monday morning, Naomi walked into the house without that familiar weight on her shoulders. From upstairs, Madame Akemi's voice called out, but softer this time. "Naomi, come up, please, please." Everyone in the house paused. Naomi went up. Madame Akemi sat at her vanity, holding a white envelope. "This is for Maya's medication." She handed Naomi $500 in cash. Naomi's hands shook. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "You said something that day," Akemi said. "About how life can break you until nothing scares you anymore." "Yes, ma'am." "Well, I think I've been fighting the wrong people." Naomi looked at her gently. "Pain makes us do things, ma'am. But it doesn't have to make us cruel. 2 weeks passed. The house changed completely. The staff began to smile again. The gardeners sang while trimming the hedges. And then one Thursday evening, Madame Akemi called Naomi into the living room. "Dress well tomorrow. You're coming with me somewhere." "Where?" "To my women's luncheon." Naomi's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I can't go to that kind of event." "Yes, you can," Akemi said calmly. "There are some women I need to introduce you to. Doctors, NGO workers. One of them runs a health foundation. She may be able to help with Maya's treatment." Naomi's eyes began to glisten. "I don't even have, I already bought you something," Madame Akemi interrupted gently. "It's on your bed." When Naomi returned to her room, there it was, a soft peach-colored dress, simple and elegant. She touched it slowly, sat on the bed, and wept, not because she was sad, but because someone finally saw her. The next day, Naomi rode in the back of Madame Akemi's SUV. At the event, people stared. Madame Akemi walked into the fancy restaurant with Naomi by her side, like an equal. "This is Naomi," Akemi said to one of the ladies at the table. "She's stronger than most women I know, and her daughter is a fighter." The woman smiled. "I run a children's heart foundation. Maybe we can help. Send me her details." Naomi stood there frozen in gratitude. In that moment, she knew this wasn't just a job anymore. This was the beginning of something new. The next Monday morning, Naomi was in the kitchen when her small phone rang. An unknown number. "Hello. Good morning. Is this Miss Naomi, mother of Maya?" "Yes, this is she. This is Dr. Addison from the Children's Cardiac Foundation. Madame Akemi referred you to us." Naomi stood slowly. "Yes, doctor. Well, we've reviewed your daughter's case, and we'd like to sponsor her next 2 procedures fully, at no cost." Silence. Naomi gripped the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, what did you say?" "We're covering everything," the doctor said, a smile in her voice. Naomi dropped to her knees. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "Thank you, Jesus." "Thank you." Mrs. Gable rushed in, alarmed. Naomi looked up, eyes red but smiling. "They're paying for Maya's surgery. Madame Akemi, she made it happen." That evening, Naomi entered Madame Akemi's room quietly. Akemi stopped her before she could leave. "Did they call?" Naomi turned slowly. "Yes, ma'am. This afternoon. They're paying for everything. Maya can have the surgery." Akemi's eyes softened. "I told you not to thank me." "I have to," Naomi said, wiping her tears. "Because you didn't have to help." "But you did." Madame Akemi looked away. "Helping you helped me. I used to think strength was in controlling everything, but I watched you suffer quietly and still serve gently. You reminded me what real strength is." 2 weeks later, the hospital room was filled with quiet beeping sounds. Maya lay peacefully, wrapped in soft pink sheets. The surgery had been a success. As Naomi arrived back at the mansion gate, Frank, the gatekeeper, opened it with a wide smile. "Welcome back, Naomi." Inside, the entire staff was waiting in the front yard. Madame Akemi stepped out, wearing a calm blue dress. "Naomi," she said gently. "Welcome back. I have something to show you." She handed Naomi a framed document. Naomi opened it and froze. It was a promotion letter, head of household operations. "You've earned it," Akemi said. "You'll oversee the staff now. Better pay, better quarters, and full medical support for Maya moving forward." Naomi couldn't speak. "Why me, ma'am?" she finally asked. "Because you did what no one else could," Akemi replied. "You didn't just clean the house, you cleaned the air, the fear, the pain. And you stayed, even when I gave you every reason to leave." One night, they sat together on the back patio. The moon was bright. "Do you know I was once a housemaid, too?" Akemi asked. Naomi turned sharply. I was 13, Akemi said, her voice distant. My mother died. I ended up in a rich man's house in Tokyo. His wife hated me. She made me feel like a stray dog. I told myself one day I'd be the madam, that I'd never be weak again. She looked away, shame flickering in her eyes. I became strong, cold, sharp. I thought that was power. But when I met you, you reminded me of the girl I buried. The girl who cried quietly while cleaning someone else's floor. I'm sorry. For everything. Naomi reached out and gently placed her hand over Madame Akemi's. Sometimes, Naomi whispered, God doesn't take us through fire to burn us. He takes us through to make us a light for others still inside the dark. It was a bright Friday morning when Maya came home. Naomi stood at the gate, her hands shaking with joy as the car pulled in. But what she didn't expect was the entire house waiting. Under the mango tree, a small table had been set up with juice and cake. And right in the middle of them all stood Madame Akemi. She walked up to Maya, knelt, and offered her a small wrapped gift. It's a storybook. I thought maybe we could read one together. Maya took it shyly. Thank you, ma'am. Akemi smiled. Call me Auntie Akemi. Naomi watched, her heart full. Once, she had been slapped for nearly spilling perfume. Now, the same hands were gently straightening her daughter's collar. Weeks passed. The house that once held fear now held warmth. One evening, as the sun set, Naomi sat with Maya in her lap. Madame Akemi stepped out with 2 glasses of iced tea. She handed one to Naomi. You know, she said, the day I slapped you, I was sure you'd leave. I wanted you to. I couldn't stand anyone seeing who I really was underneath all the pride. Naomi looked at her gently. And now? Akemi smiled. Now I thank God you didn't leave. You weren't just a maid in this house, Naomi. You were the mirror I was too scared to look into, and the comfort I never knew I needed. Naomi wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, and you gave my daughter a second chance at life. I'll never forget that. As the evening breeze swayed the trees, Naomi closed her eyes and breathed in the peace. She had come to this house with nothing but pain and a duffel bag. Now she had respect, honor, and hope. She had become the woman no one could forget. Not because she fought, but because she stayed. And in staying, she healed everything.